Okay, it is Sunday, and I was not planning on working or going live. It's Taint Week, which means nothing happens, nothing gets done. There are no expectations. But then I got a phone call last night from my good friend who's joining me now, Allison Jaslow, who is a close personal friend, a confidant, and a mentor, a born leader, a combat veteran. And she's running for Congress, she told me. And I said, well, then I'm not working. I'm going to work, whatever that means. I want to go live with you, and I want to try to raise money live and with the podcast because you are running in North Carolina's 3rd District. You've just announced. I am blown away and so excited. I'm excited for the people of North Carolina's 3rd District. I'm excited for you, and I'm so happy to have you here. Congrats on your announcement. This is a big deal. You're one of my favorite people, and I'm so excited to talk to you today, Allison.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate the enthusiasm.
Of course. I mean, you have done a lot in your life and career, from the military to working as a chief of staff in Congress to running campaigns to the prestigious position as the executive director of Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America, which is the most respected veterans organization for veterans, maybe overall, certainly of that generation. And then we talked a lot about what your next move would be, and you were thinking about it, and then the Republicans changed the district, and maybe not in their favor. What led to this decision?
Well, as you mentioned, North Carolina was a part of the redistricting wars that have been happening across the country this year. But actually, North Carolina has been redrawing its map for years. And so there wasn't really any more gerrymandering to be done, but they went ahead and redrew the maps to try and target a Democratic member of Congress, and inadvertently made one of their own members much more vulnerable. And in a year where you're seeing Democrats overperform, now that we're actually having elections, it is a very winnable seat. If we have the right candidate in the race who runs a strong professional campaign, it's a real pickup opportunity for Democrats in North Carolina this year. And
the primary is, you got to get through this first, and it is in March. Is that right?
Correct. March 3rd.
March 3rd, not a lot of time to campaign and to raise money. And so it's a tight turnaround. It's like 8 weeks.
Yes. Early voting starts the middle of February. So
wow. And right now there's only one other candidate announced. I'm not even talking about that person because I'm fully in the tank for Allison Jaslow. I got to admit, normally I try to stay objective and so on, but I mean, I can't with our history, with our friendship. I'm fully in the tank and supporting you. And I hope people will go to AllisonJaslowForCongress.com, learn more, and consider a donation if you're listening to this, because Allison is the best. Why? Why do you want to run? You know all the inner workings specifically of this body, the House of Representatives. You worked there. You know your way around the building. You know your way around politics. Talk to us a little bit about your experience there, and then why you decided to put your name on the ballot.
You know, I'd say a couple of things, Pete. First of all, you know me well enough to know that I'm not BSing when I say this, but that at a time where people are saying, like, where are our leaders, where are our leaders, where are our leaders? It's not like me to be a part of the chorus, but to find my way to step up and lead. And, you know, I'm actually grateful for the opportunity to be able to do so now that, you know, the seat looks so winnable. And to your point, you know, I have a lot of experience in the political world. So I know all too well some of the undesirable aspects of this process, but I also know that it turns away really good people of character. And I think one of the reasons why Congress is where it is right now is because not enough good people who are tough and willing to put themselves through this process are willing to step up. But if more of us do, then Americans will have the leadership that they deserve in Washington.
That's a great, absolutely honest explanation too, because I think that things are getting dirtier and filthier and harder, especially to raise money. You have to have, you know, how do you go run for Congress, which is a full-time job, put your name on the ballot, and also still pay your mortgage or rent or your health insurance? It's close to impossible. And not to mention the fact that if you do decide to run, you're getting attacked from all sides and everybody you know and love. It's a scary thing to do, to run for any office now more than ever in our lifetime. I think that's fair to say. So why do you want to do it specifically? What are the issues in North Carolina or for the country that you're most concerned about that you think you can make a difference on in the House?
Well, to your point about barriers to even being a candidate,
Yeah.
if I didn't have the career that I had to this point, this wouldn't even be possible for somebody from my background. I come from a very working class household. In fact, my stepdad was a grocery store worker. Thankfully had a really great contract from the UFCW. So I have a very strong appreciation for organized labor as well. But, it's important that somebody who understands the experience of working people be representing them in Washington. This is a district that is a very working class district that I'm running in. It's a district that also has 2 military installations in it. So a large military and veterans community as well. And they deserve a seat at the table as well. And so, it was very rewarding for me, as you mentioned before, to be CEO of Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America, where I was able to testify before Congress and try to give us a seat at a table in that way. And I think this allows me to take that service to the next level.
Talk to us a little bit about your former life, your resume. Most interestingly to me is your 2 combat tours in Iraq, where you achieved the rank of captain. Why did you join the military to begin with? How old were you?
Well, joining the Army was the dream from when I was 13. I think it was around the time that I lost my dad by suicide that I fell head over heels in love with my country. Maybe, in retrospect, I needed to throw myself into something, but, my desire to serve my country and my fellow countrymen began way back then. And I thought I'd be in the Army for a career. I went to school on an ROTC scholarship. I actually started the fall of 2000. Of course, in my sophomore year, the trajectory of my service changed. We became a nation at war, first in Afghanistan, then in Iraq. And, by the time I was sworn in and went to my officer basic course, it was within months that I found myself on a plane to Iraq. My first deployment was an assignment as a platoon leader where I first led a logistics mission that was base confined, but then it got contracted out. So my soldiers became a force protection platoon, which meant that they were in charge of both security on the base and then also protecting convoys that went across Iraq. I ended up doing 2 missions, or I was assigned to 2 missions during that deployment. So the convoys that I went out on would usually go out and back in the same day versus like some of my soldiers would go, from where we were in Taji to all the way down to Kuwait and back, or all the way north to Mosul and back, or out to the Syrian border. Mine were usually in the Baghdad area of operations. But, that definitely was the more, let's call it dangerous deployment, literally dodging roadside bombs, ducking tracer rounds, et cetera. As folks know, convoys regularly got hit in Iraq. So, wasn't a infantry or other type of, combat arms mission, but definitely in the crosshairs of what was going on over there. I came back to Fort Carson for about a year and change, where I was stationed stateside, Fort Carson, Colorado, and then deployed again in January of 2007, where I was there for about 60 days before the surge was announced. And so that deployment ended up being about 15 months. It was during that deployment that I decided to get out of the Army, in part because, I really took the Army values seriously, which is we wore them on a dog tag around our neck. But I saw a lot of my leaders actually not living out the values in the same way that I was. And it was hard for me, after putting the Army on a pedestal at such a young age, to accept that in my leadership. So I made the difficult decision to get out. And what has remained is my desire to still serve And
Right.
so I've been very grateful to, at junctures throughout my life, find different people or causes to serve that I feel like could advance the betterment of our country.
You have done all kinds of different service at this point. And I mean that you continue to. The desire remains. I mean, you're the perfect person to be running for Congress. Your resume, your background, your desire. I think your lack of compromise in terms of your integrity, you're uncorruptible. I don't think you could sleep at night if you did something that you felt was dishonest or corrupt in any of the jobs and roles that you've held. And I think that's evidence based on when you have resigned from many of the places that you have, because it just wasn't working for any number of reasons. Talk to me about your role at IAVA. What did you do? Tell us just a little bit about, in case people don't know, Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America, this organization, how you got involved and how you rose to the top of it.
Well, Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America is the nation's leading post 9/11 generation veterans advocacy organization. When I left my last role on Capitol Hill, where I was working for a congresswoman from Illinois, I was looking for like the next best way to make an impact, and ultimately found my way to Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America, which we also call IAVA. I first started as a political director, but very quickly, because I had a background of being a chief of staff, the founder at the time started talking to me about being his chief of staff because he was looking for one. And so I pretty quickly was promoted into being chief of staff. This was in 2016. Headed into 2017 when we launched our She Who Born the Battle campaign, which did two things. It didn't just advocate for women veterans and our unique needs, but I will always be proud of the fact that IAVA as an organization was willing to not just make women veterans a priority, but in 2017, we made women veterans the priority. And
Right.
so I became executive director at that time. I was then the face of the campaign. I was the organization's face on Capitol Hill in Congress and with the administration. I left the organization in 2018, but it was a great privilege to return in 2023 to be the CEO. Though I was executive director before, I was still the number 2 of the founder. This time I was the head honcho, and it was really rewarding to allow the organization to make a huge impact, not just during my tenure as CEO, but especially throughout the transition of the current administration. I did a lot of advocacy around what we should want in a Secretary of Defense and or what would be really concerning about a Secretary of Defense. In fact, I tried very hard to get the media to focus on things that I thought were most consequential in Pete Hex's background versus some of the things that they were drawn to. He, of course, is Secretary of Defense now. So we're living in a world where he is providing not so great leadership for our military, unfortunately. But it was very rewarding to lead the organization during that time, to also, help people understand, as we were booting out service members who were qualified to serve, why we wouldn't want to do that in the age of the all-volunteer force, right. Among other things. And then, twice while I was back at the organization, I also got to testify before Congress again. And I hope our members would say that I really brought it, that I really channeled our generation of veterans and made those 5 minutes matter before Congress. And unfortunately, when I did so earlier this year, the incumbent member of Congress, who I'll be running against this fall, who sits on the committee, didn't even care to show up.
Right.
So
talking about the current incumbent whose seat you're running, he's in the seat, North Carolina's third. His name is Greg Murphy. He's a physician. He's a urologist, which we won't make any jokes. But you could certainly talk about his record and what he has done, not done, shown up for, not shown up for. Mm-hmm. What do you want to say about him other than, he didn't show up for a committee that he's on? He's supposed to be there when you were testifying as the head of the premier veterans organization of our generation. He was absent that day.
Yeah, not only do I think that voters should consider kicking out somebody who can't even show up and literally do their job in the most basic sense, but they should consider hiring somebody who does. You know, I have a track record of showing up for a lot of people and also for the constituents I'm supposed to represent. Right. You know, just until earlier this year, it was representing 425,000 members and supporters, and also, you know, millions of post 9/11 generation veterans. And I will continue to do that if I'm elected to Congress, but also show up better than those who are in power right now are showing up for working people. You know, I know what it's like to live on the edge, and the cost of living is crushing people right now. They are also getting either kicked off of their healthcare, or their healthcare costs are going up because of such failed leadership in Washington right now. And so I plan to every day wake up and show up for not just, you know, the military and veterans community, as I have done for so many years, but also for working people everywhere who deserve better representation in Washington than they're getting right now.
Is there, I have no doubt about that, knowing you, of course, I can't imagine anybody working harder than you and having more clarity, moral clarity than you on the job that is obviously lacking for any Republican in Congress, including Dr. Greg Murphy in North Carolina.
You know what has blown me away as it relates to those in Congress right now?
Go ahead.
And this, you know, I think you see this even on the Democratic side in some instances, but I had more courage when I was 22, when I got on a plane and was shipped off to war, than most members of Congress have today. And given the times that we're in, it's pretty fucking pathetic.
I think there's a motivation for that. And I think that that's where it begins. Of course, it's about courage, but it has to start with the incentive for why you're there in the first place, right? Like,
fair.
I mean, the courage comes with the incentive and the motivation to be there. You decided to join the Army. You were shipped off to war. You did your duty in combat. And that's nothing compares to that in terms of, you know, the kind of courage you're stepping into a war where what are these guys, what are congressmen scared of? I mean, it's losing their seat. Obviously, things are scarier now than they've ever been. The threats to people's lives, there's no doubt there's more concern about that. But I don't think that's necessarily what you're criticizing in terms of courage lacking with many in Congress now. It's not that they're concerned about their personal safety or the safety of their family. It's they're concerned about their reputation or their job, or frankly, in many cases with the Republicans, you know, getting in trouble with their cult leader, I think.
I mean, I guess I understand those dynamics too, but you know, you mentioned this earlier. Like, I don't know if I was in their shoes, I'd be able to live with myself with some of the,
right.
You know,
right.
You know, with some of the stuff that they're being forced into. You see glimmers here and there. You know, I give Roger Wicker a whole lot of credit for asking for an IG investigation into Signalgate. It's something that should have been investigated. There still has not been adequate accountability following that investigation.
Yeah.
But, you know, you see moments where, you know, especially when there's national security concerns, some Republicans in Congress are stepping up, but, you know, a lot of them could be doing a lot better than they are, and still might not keep their jobs at the end of the day. So
if you're elected, I'm sure that you would obviously be more than qualified to be on certain committees, Foreign Affairs Committee. What would you think about what is happening right now in the Pacific and the Caribbean with these targeted assassinations? Some call them murders, some call them unlawful, some call them illegal. Not to mention the fact that there seems to be a real drum beating for a new war with Venezuela. What do you have to say about these targeted assassinations and the potential for another war?
Well, I'd say a couple of things. One, I'm not a JAG attorney, so I don't feel like I'm in the best position to talk about what is or isn't illegal. What concerns me the most is the utter lack of congressional oversight that's taking place right now. You see few attempts, but why the Secretary of Defense wasn't dragged in to brief Congress, 30 days after all of this happened, I don't know. But I think it would be helpful to understand what we're trying to do here, which is like what we should do for any war, right? And what we failed to do throughout the course of the Iraq and Afghanistan wars, right? I mean, it made perfect sense to go into Afghanistan after 9/11. What we didn't do was continually challenge ourselves as a country to ensure that like we had clarity of mission and goals, and then it was worth people still risking their lives to achieve those goals. We lost sight of them. And I would hope that should we consider going into another conflict of some sort, that we would go through the same process. And I don't think we should be allowed, the administration should just be allowed to like wage a quasi war without Congress asking tough questions of it, Yeah. But it's par for the course for a Congress that's abdicated its war powers authorities my entire adult life.
Right.
So.
Right. I think the other thing that's interesting about you running for Congress and being in Congress is your ability to organize people, your ability to lead people, your ability to bring people together. I got to the great honor to watch you lead these Patriotism and Pints. Is that what it was called?
Pints and Patriotism, yes.
Pints and Patriotism, where you and a colleague would go into different towns in America, different bars with a whole bunch of veterans and lead a conversation about their interests. And I remember, I've told you I could never do that because I was getting outraged by the people who I disagree with, by the MAGA people. But you were so calm, you were so open, and those qualities are what allowed the conversation to occur to begin with, and allowed for people to feel heard and for there to be growth. I would have struggled with that, but you didn't. You did a great job at it. I think those are qualities that are desperately needed that you would bring to Congress. Tell me more about how you would see yourself as a congressperson, Allison. What do you think who would you be in there?
Well, to your point, I'm not afraid to have conversations with people who I don't necessarily agree with. Pints and Patriotism brought together veterans from across the political spectrum. And we would sometimes have heated conversations, but they remain civil. I also, I'm not in the category of folks who's going to disown family members who don't vote like me. In fact, I try to have a relationship with them where they'll be comfortable enough to share their views with me so I can at least understand where they're coming from.
Right.
And I think that is core to my leadership style. And I have I'm not going to change. I'm going to bring that leadership style to the way in which I represent the people of North Carolina's 3rd district, but also would want to engage with, colleagues in Congress as well, which it's a tough place for, people to be civil to each other these days. But I think we need to bring it back.
Yeah, for sure. You would be a person who could get that done. You've been doing it your whole life and your whole career.
Well, you have to. I mean, you can't, when you lead troops, you can't write off certain troops because they have different political views or they come from a different part of the country of you or whatever else. It's just not possible. You can't fulfill your mission if you do that, And so I think, honestly, I wish there were more veterans in Congress because they've understood and had to do that and can tap into that muscle memory, because it feels like a quality that's missing from Congress right now, but that, is sorely needed in my view.
Where do you feel like you put yourself? How do you think you'll try to identify yourself to the voters in North Carolina's 3rd district, the fighting 3rd, as Stephen Colbert would have called it on the old show? In terms of, does it matter where you are on the spectrum politically? Do you consider yourself progressive or moderate? I hate those labels, but they're shorthand and they help, in this case, voters figure out where you're at. I always want people to talk about issues. Well, where are you on healthcare, education, anything, cost of living, the environment, elder care? There's so many really important issues that affect people, and they hear certain things and decide who you are politically. Who are you politically? How do you identify that way? Obviously, you're running as a Democrat.
Yes, but I, personally am a more moderate Democrat than many other Democrats. And we should want a moderate Democrat running in a seat like this too, if we want to be able to win it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's just, I think everybody responds to their lived experience differently.
That's right.
But that's, that me being a Democrat has everything to do with how I know Democratic policies played a role in my life. I tell people all the time, my grandfather used to tell me growing up, if you care about our military and our national security, you need to vote Republican. And so when I was in high school, I thought I should be a Republican. But when I got to college and I realized that the role that public schools played in my life, and then it was, because my mom, like, one of the smartest things she did for us growing up was like move us into a good school district. And like, I don't know what my life would be like if I didn't go to high quality public schools growing up. And I also, I got Social Security when my dad died. So I don't know if people know this, but the Social Security helps out retirees, but there's also a survivor benefit. So when my dad passed away, my family got checks for all three of my sisters. And we went from my alcoholic dad not paying child support to getting his Social Security, which, like, I didn't have to be looking at the checkbook, but I could tell the difference that made in our working class families' lives.
Right.
And it was Democrats who, advocated for Social Security, which is still the greatest anti-poverty program in our nation's history.
Right.
And then I mentioned this before, my stepdad, who's always been a wage worker, he worked at a grocery store when I was growing up, but he was represented by the UFCW and had a really good contract. So we had incredible healthcare through Kaiser Permanente, and also had he had a good wage. So, like, not just for every day, but also for when he had to do overtime, which sometimes he would choose to do overtime. Sometimes he'd get forced into doing overtime. But I just know, first of all, that many other workers after him had worse and worse contracts. But, if it wasn't for the UFCW and their ability to negotiate on his behalf, I just don't know what my upbringing would have been like. And, because even then we still kind of lived on the edge, So anyway, as a matter of integrity, I became a Democrat when I was in college. And, and that's just, I couldn't unsee what the role, policies that Democrats played in my life.
Right.
But also, I live in a world where, there are a lot of hard knocks, and, I have not just a military background, but I understand that the world that we live in is dangerous and whatnot. And so I think that sort of also shapes me as well, and why I'm more moderate maybe than some other Democrats.
Personally, I've gotten to know you really well. I've reached out to you several times in kind of crisis after I lost my amazing corporate gig, when my marriage came undone. And you taught me about resilience and helped me through those difficult moments in my life, which I'll always be grateful for. Who are you? You mentioned your dad, of course, took his own life. He was an alcoholic. You were, I think, 13? Mm-hmm. Mentioned your stepdad a couple times. Who are the other influences? Like, who made you the person that you are, with this integrity, with this moral clarity, who built this resilience, who stepped into challenges, all kinds of challenges your whole life, including this new one? Is there a person? Is there a mentor? Is there a philosophy, a book, an experience? Is it all of it?
I would say, just because of how life transpired, I had no choice but to build resilience.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that also shapes me is, it's funny because J.D. Vance's life story is really well known as well. Mm. And something that is, again, a matter of integrity for me is like, I don't know why, given some of the things that happened growing up, or like even later in life, like why I happen to be built the way that I am, and have been able to overcome having multiple adverse childhood experiences as a child. In part because I've like seen it inside my own family too. And so what motivates me is to make things a little bit easier on kids like I once was. Not to like tell everybody else to just figure it out the way that I did, and so, and I think something that also has, shaped me throughout my career is even if I've felt disappointed by leaders, that I have a responsibility to be the leader that I wish I had. For others, but there's a saying. There's actually a fellow vet who wrote this book that says, "Lead yourself first." So
I love that. I love all of it, and you've always wanted to be the change that you want to see. Like that's who you are. It's who you've always been. It's pretty simple, but it's real hard to do because there's a lot of obstacles in the way of that. But you have not been shy about confronting them. I'm so excited for your run. Allison, JaslowForCongress.com. I hope people will go donate 5 or 10 or as much money as they possibly can to this campaign. Unfortunately, you got to raise a lot of money to do all the things that need to get done, to hire campaign staff. You've only got about 8 weeks to do it in. I'll do whatever it takes to keep you out there and promote you and platform you. And I hope people will watch this or listen to this interview and see what I've seen from my friend Allison. I'm just so excited that you're running. And I'm really excited that we've got some amazing candidates who we can truly believe in and who aren't bought and paid for. And you are obviously always been one of those people. I can't believe you're running. I'm still in a little bit of shock because I think it's such a great opportunity for the people of North Carolina's 3rd district, but also all the rest of us to have you in Congress. What else can we do for you? Final ask or word, Allison?
Yes, I would say, please donate to my campaign. If you feel like we could use more people like me in Congress, spread the word in other ways.
Yep.
I will not be upset if word gets out about me and people, not just in North Carolina, but elsewhere, want to see me succeed in this race. And then otherwise just, send good vibes, because I think that we can win this thing. In fact, I know we can win this thing. Things are just lining up to be able to do that. And I'm really looking forward to teaching North Carolina Republicans a lesson.
Yeah.
All of this. Yeah.
I'm real excited. Thank you all of us for joining live on a Sunday night. Thanks for listening on the podcast. Go to AllisonJaslowForCongress.com. If you can't remember that, it's in the show links and the notes and the show notes, I think they're called. Allison, thank you so much for joining me. I look forward to having you back as often as you can in the time between now and the primary and anytime else. And I can't wait to sit in your office in the House of Representatives. Can I come and sit in the office and annoy everybody? Hey guys.
I don't know about that. That might be something that I need to consult with staff on.
Hey guys. I call her Allison. I'm friends with the Congresswoman. Hey guys, do you guys have any lollipops or anything? Candy jar? Congrats, Allison. Thank you very much for joining me.
Awesome. Thank you for having me on, Pete. Always a pleasure.